I'm Teresa Coraggio, and this is Third Paradigm. My topic today is the twisting of tonic masculinity, how words can be used to mean their opposite. For several weeks, I've been mulling over another episode on tonic masculinity, and I've been talking with my daughters and my dancer friends and asking the question of myself as to whether my objection to its use without attribution is egoic. Is it something where I just want credit, or is it something more important? And if it is, am I feeling bullied into being passive, aka female, and not objecting? So I don't know whether it's emblematic of the misuse of the term that I am being cut out of it. So I'm going to start by looking at its origins and what the context was in the article by Charles Eisenstein of I Like to Fight, into which I responded and first defined and used that term. As I prepared to write this episode, Jay Rollins, who is the first person who took the concept, added another guest post to his Tonic Masculinity project, as he calls it, by having W. McCrae give a woman's perspective on trusting men. I didn't save a copy of my comment before he deleted it, but it said something to the effect that I didn't know how to feel about being erased from this idea, and that I felt that if it had been Charles Eisenstein who had originated the term in his post, rather than me responding to Charles Eisenstein, that he would have been credited every time. So I also felt that Jay had been erased in a way because the Tonic 7 were invited to do an interview that I'm going to be responding to on RealFemSapien. And so he was not part of the Tonic 7, nor William Hunter Duncan. And he had a falling out, Jay did, with John Carter and described him as the angriest person he had ever met. So that's who right now has ownership over that idea of tonic masculinity and is being interviewed about it. So Jay responded to me saying, Teresa, no one owns tonic masculinity. It's a fine, pithy turn of phrase, but the work was clearly defining it, and that work has been done. Please don't use my comment section to air your personal grievances, particularly those directed at people not mentioned in an article. And please don't shit stir here. The situation to which you're referring is over and is not relevant to McCrae's excellent positive piece. This is my house. If I want drama here, believe me when I say I know how to initiate it and how to end it. If you want drama, you have a blog of your own. Does that feel like a threat to you? Because it feels like a threat to me. Believe me when I say I know how to initiate it and how to end it. So my reading of that is that I should feel intimidated and afraid of retaliation. Maybe the comment mobbing that they say that they do when someone criticizes one of their bros. So I don't know whether it's drama, shit stirring, or personal grievance to say to the person who hijacked my term that it doesn't feel okay to me. If what I said had no credence, there was no reason for Jay to delete it. But Jay's point is that my pithy little turn of phrase was nothing, and the real work was defining it, and that work has been done. In which case, I suggest they take the work over which they have full ownership and find a new pithy little phrase to describe it. If it was nothing, that shouldn't be hard. In the meantime, let's look at the article that Charles Eisenstein wrote, to which I responded with my definition and then coined the phrase to capture that. Charles wrote, "I like to fight." In a nuanced article, Charles describes the annual convergence of a men's organization called the Sacred Sons. He stands in a circle of men thinking, without the kind of healing I am seeing here, this world has no chance. The world can heal only if men heal. And it is happening. We are ready. As men stepped into the circle and told their stories, he wrote, "The field of love in the circle was palpable, dispelling the fear, the posturing, the guarding, and the hiding that keeps men apart and denies them the brotherhood that is the medicine. It was a masculine love, uncompromising in its stand for what we know each man can become." He concludes with, "What I will say next, though I am speaking of men, applies also to women when circumstances call forth their inner masculine. In my speech that night, I invoked a story I heard about one of America's all too common mass shootings, the Aurora Theater shooting of 2012. 4 of the men who died there died because they interposed their bodies between their girlfriends and the shooter. I said something like this: that is the core aspect of masculinity. Each man here has it in him to do that. Each man here would offer his life to protect what he loves, to protect life itself." I continued, "The fact that many men, including ourselves, have often failed miserably to live up to that potential does not make it untrue. It is who we really are, and our purpose here is to bring this, our true nature, into full manifestation." In those words, I was also suggesting what the higher incarnation of the fight is. The true warrior is not the one who is willing to kill. That doesn't make a warrior. The true warrior is the one who is willing, if need be, to die. Courage and not violence defines him. The fight, then, is a special case, appropriate in special circumstances, of the willingness to put everything on the line, to offer even one's own body and all the ego holds precious in service to life. The world is in bad shape right now. Rainforests are disappearing, insects are declining, children are going hungry, entire nations are falling into poverty. Wars are raging, health is declining, totalitarian powers are ascending. We need men who are willing to risk themselves to change all that. Sometimes this does involve an actual fight. For example, legal battles, debates, political battles. I honor the fighters. However, the ultimate victory will not be won by fighting." To that I responded, "This does my heart good. I think this is the world we need, one that puts children at the center, surrounded by women who are surrounded by men. Tonic masculinity." So what are the salient points that Charles made that I encapsulated as tonic masculinity? 1, to offer his life to protect what he loves, to protect life itself. 2, one who is willing, if need be, to die. 3, courage and not violence defines him. 4, the willingness to put everything on the line, to offer even one's own body and all the ego holds precious in service to life. 5, who are willing to risk themselves to change all of that. Now let's look at how the Bro Pack, as I'm going to refer to them, has defined the term. In Mark Bazzone's "The Cat Was Never Found," he posted In From the Cold as his first on tonic masculinity, and he wrote, "On January 10th of this new year, my good buddy Jay Rollins started a fire. It was the best kind of fire, the one which warms and illuminates. Similar campfires have been dotting the landscape ever since. prompting some seriously talented writers to add their own insights to Jay's brilliant formulation of tonic masculinity as an antidote to our cultural and spiritual disease. The beauty of tonic masculinity is that it's a team sport. To act as men is to build up the other men around us, so that together we can stave off the forces of entropy, chaos, mediocrity, and evil. It pushes us to unearth those talents that are best suited for such a worthwhile purpose, not only in ourselves, but in each other. Thus far, John Carter, Harrison Keeley, and L.P. Cook have gifted us with brilliant takes on the concept. So, in Mark's attribution to Jay, my pithy little phrase becomes a brilliant formulation to which three men have gifted brilliant takes on the concept. Mark, it turns out, will be the only one ever to mention me. In the Bro Pill, which he links to the interview done by RealFemSapiens, after a list of the tonic men that it was raining, he added that Third Paradigm's Teresa Carraggio has been doing a kind of meta-commentary series on our articles. He was also the only one to mention me in the interview when he said, Teresa, the female writers whose last name I forget, we've been engaging with her, and I appreciate her work from a certain angle, but... and then he names a point where he disagrees. So you can see how awkward that is. Without saying that I'm the originator of the term, there's no reason for me to have even been in that conversation. And so he had to scramble to think about how he was going to describe me in some other way. And Allie Drummond, the interviewer, I'm surprised, didn't ask about where the phrase came from. So here's the reason I think that attribution is readily and enthusiastically given to Jay for his brilliant formulation, and then when it's discovered that he really didn't formulate it, I become a random fan who's doing a meta-commentary on them. I think the way they're defining it is anti-feminine. They're focusing on the masculine side of it rather than the tonic versus toxic. And so it becomes anti-feminine characteristics in men who are seen as weak when they have them, definitely anti-gay men, seriously anti-trans, and also anti-actual women. Except, of course, for the women who are the exceptions. And Allie is one of those. She's in her mid-20s. She was in the military, is now married into the military, is pregnant. And in her series, I watched her original manifesto, which is called From Feminism to Freedom. And actually, I like her. She looks at things from a very different perspective, and I do find that refreshing. In a way, she was kind of like Candace Owens to me, where I was surprised at how many things I agreed with. And she's answering from her own experience and is very genuine. And so I think that's great. But she is an exception in that way that my daughters describe as a pick-me girl, someone who becomes that exception and bonds with men by throwing other women under the bus. She describes in her manifesto how she realized after college that all of her problems were caused by women, and that she describes it as a gynocentric social order that pedestalizes women. I'll be surprised if after she has her baby, she continues to think that we live in a culture that puts women on pedestals, because I definitely don't think that's true for mothers. She says that almost all of her audience is men. There might be a few women, and that she expects her audience to continue to be almost all men. She says that women yell at her when she cites statistics like that 45% of women between 22 and 45 will be single by 2030, that 50.1% of women are childless now, and that marriage is occurring at a rate of 6 per 1,000, and I'm not sure exactly what that means. So her statement is that she wants to stay home and serve her husband, and that if you're lucky enough to marry a masculine man, you should expect to be told sometimes to your face that your ideas are stupid. I would never yell at Allie for citing those statistics since I am myself a data junkie, but I think that those statistics illustrate the problem that I'm trying to draw attention to with the term tonic masculinity. It's not all women's fault, and it also is not men's fault. I think this is a fault of a system which, in my words, serves the ejaculations of men with children as an inconvenient byproduct. One concept they talk about in the interview, since a few of them are from the military, is that women have the ability to get out of serving if they're pregnant or breastfeeding. So if they just have sequential children, like 4 or 5, they can get the benefits of being in the military without actually having to serve. Now, to me, that does not sound at all like a gynocentric social order. They also talk about a concept called the longhouse, which I guess is in online right circles. And that's the Iroquois idea of a female-dominated matriarchal culture. And they talk somewhat gleefully about how then when Western male-dominated militarized cultures came in, they wiped them out. Now, I'm not sure what is tonic masculinity about killing elderly children, women, and men, and destroying an entire culture. Destruction. That's the tonic masculinity we're talking about? So let me give some of the statements that were made by the men in that interview without attribution, and we can look at whether this seems like tonic masculinity to you. Masculinity is like porn. You know it when you see it. Masculinity is superiority, being willing to part with the consensus. It displeases women when you have a strong opinion they don't agree with and you don't soften it. No one likes a mixed workforce very much because men can't fight with a girl. If you win, you lose, and if you lose, you've lost to a girl. It's not like a male competency hierarchy. Masculinity is single-minded focus, breaking something down. Why is masculinity called toxic? Because men are more disagreeable. It's going to be a man who stands up with his arms crossed and says, "This is wrong." The longhouse is enforced egalitarianism because women don't want to stick out and be the best at anything. Women compete indirectly, which creates an opening for psychopaths to enter and be given power. That's not as easy in direct competition. It seems like every girl I see on Tinder is talking about how much they like watching true crime dramas. They're writing letters to serial killers. Because of sexual depolarization, we have feminized men who are fat and women who aren't so attractive themselves, so they end up looking for dark triad guys. The left invented toxic masculinity by introducing the idea of tonic masculinity and pushing it into the lexicon. We're flipping the script. Toxic is the absence of masculinity, as well as when it goes a little bit too far and you have a serial killer. So essentially, they're defining toxic masculinity as serial killers who go a hair too far, and as men who aren't very masculine. I have never heard a woman describe toxic masculinity in that way. My youngest daughter says that there's an internet meme that men see toxic men as ones who hit women in public and toxic women as ones who criticize men ever. So they're using my term tonic masculinity to flip the script, to take all the things that I would associate as toxic masculinity, things like domination, arrogance, superiority, competition, violence, and outright misogyny, and calling it tonic. Problem solved. Please let me know in the comments if you think I'm being petty and should just let this go. In the meantime, here's one that does a different perspective on the Iroquois longhouse by looking at when mothers ran the world and the Jigansasa, the mother of all nations, ended up saving them from the French. And then this is the playlist, Where Are the Women? And I think we should continue to be asking that question. Thank you for watching.